Is abortion permissible according to the Bible? This is the only reference that I know of that is used to say that the abortion is permissible according to the Bible. The reference is Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 and 23. From the New Living Translation, it states, "Now suppose two men are fighting, and in the process, they accidentally strike a pregnant woman so she gives birth prematurely. If no further injury results, the man who struck the woman must pay the amount of compensation the woman's husband demands, and the judges approve. But if there is further injury, the punishment must match the injury, a life for a life." Folks, that's how one side sees it. Yet others will argue that this passage is really saying if a mother has a miscarriage, there will only be a fine. But if the mother dies, well, then it was life for life. The problem is depending on what translation you use. Some translate it as premature birth and others as a miscarriage. Yet others translate it if the child comes out from her, which actually is the literal translation. But the text doesn't seem to clarify if the child is alive or not. So here's my question on both sides of the debate. If this passage did not exist, what two passages from the Bible support your position? Now, I have given a number of reasons from the scriptures why abortion is wrong. In my video, Is the Bible Silent on Abortion? However, those that believe that abortion is permissible should provide at least two passages that support their position. Remember, Bible doctrine is based on two or more witnesses in order for it to be established. If you really believe that this one verse proves that abortion is permissible, well, I'm going to show you why you really don't have a case. Remember, abortion is premeditated killing of an unborn child. But in this passage, the circumstance is not of that of premeditation. It's kind of like road rage, in which harm comes to a mother with child. Looking at it from the King James Version, Exodus chapter 21 verse 22 states, "If men strive and hurt a woman with child." So, from this text, it's for a particular situation only. That's key in understanding this particular text. It's not speaking of hitting a woman in general, but only a woman with child. There is no premeditated harm directed to the child as it is with abortion. There is no one advising the mother to kill her unborn child. So even in this passage, we see there's not one scripture in the entire Bible that supports a premeditated abortion. We do have the account, however, of Pharaoh demanding that any boy child be killed at birth, and King Herod did the same thing at the time of Jesus' birth. Notice if they strike, meaning accidentally, whereas in abortion it is intentionally to strike dead the unborn baby. To those of pro-choice, have you even considered there was a protection granted in refugee cities to those that accidentally killed another person, whether male or female? Numbers chapter 35 verses 22 through 25 from the New Living Translations. "But suppose someone pushes another person without having shown previous hostility, or throws something that unintentionally hits another person, or accidentally drops a huge stone on someone, though they were not enemies, and the person dies. If this should happen, the community must follow these regulations in making a judgment between the slayer and the avenger, the victim's nearest relative. The community must protect the slayer from the avenger and must escort the slayer back to live in the city of refuge to which he fled. There he must remain until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the sacred oil." Wow, check that out. Notice that someone could receive the death penalty if severe harm came to a woman with child, but that's the only case. We just read people can die by accident and there is a place that they can go. So if a man or woman was killed by another person by accident, the person that accidentally killed that man or woman can flee for safety. However, notice, if a woman with child and a life dies, then a person can be put to death. Remember, only a woman with child can a person be put to death, even if it was by accident. And thus that proves the value of a woman with child, and I will develop this. For if the unborn was of less value, then the person that accidentally caused harm to the woman with child could flee. But according to this passage, if serious harms come to a person, can be put to death, in which the only difference is the added unborn child. So let's continue. So this fight breaks out, a woman with child is struck, and then the text states, so her fruit depart. Thus her fruit means something born, and it is her offspring. Whether the child is dead or alive, at this point we don't seem to know. But how in the world is this text referring to abortion, since abortion is done to that which is unborn? The text continues about the fruit will depart from her, literally to go or bring out. So the child will exit the womb and thus will be born. The issue in this debate for most is whether the child be dead or alive. But I'm going to show you there's more to the issue than that. So the next step is to allow the text to determine the meaning. So here's the case scenario again. If men strive, this is the beginning of the timeline. Let's call that A. There's a fight, and then they strike a woman with child. This is the second part of the timeline, and we'll call it B. This comes at some point after the fight has started. A pregnant woman is struck in some way. Next, sometime later, so that her fruit depart from her, the text states. Now, this could be hours, days, weeks, or even months after the incident. I think of it like a car accident where someone is struck, but even if they think they're okay, it may take some time before one knows if there was any permanent damage. To me, this is what the content of the text is saying. Next, it states, and no mischief foul. Literally hurt, or it's been also translated injury. So, at birth, we will call it C, which is vital to understand the passage itself. We can't determine the punishment that is to be handed out until the woman gives birth. Only then will we be able to determine if there is permanent injury in any way and what punishment should be applied. Now, I want to show how poor the pro-choice position really is, because they never took into account the cities of refuge. And this really proves that the Bible has divine wisdom that they don't. I want to read the text again and then repeat what they believe. Starting in verse 22, if men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief foul, he shall surely be punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. They believe that the text is stating that a woman will have a miscarriage as a result of the one that struck her by accident. He will simply pay a fine, and thus the value of the unborn life is far less, since only a fine has to be paid. So if the text states a woman with child were to get struck, then the woman with child, I would think, should be the focus for at least the rest of the text. How can you change the whole content midstream? For once birth has occurred, the text declares that it will be determined what the penalty of the assaultant would be. Since both were involved in the alteration, it shouldn't both be involved in the determining the outcome of his penalty. Yet that is not how the pro-choice advocates see it. So, let's look at why their position doesn't fit the text. I'm going to give 3 different examples to illustrate my point. Number 1, Kim has a 6-month-old baby and is accidentally killed. The man that did it went to a city of refuge for safety. Her husband John lost his wife and now has a 6-month-old to raise on his own. Second, Kathy is 6 months pregnant, gets hit accidentally when her husband got in a fight with another man. Kathy appears okay but dies giving birth, and so the man is put to death. Had Kathy not been pregnant and she got struck by accident, even by that same man, he could be spared and can go to a city of refuge for protection. Finally, Mary was 6 months pregnant and her husband also got in a fight and she had a miscarriage. So according to the pro-choice advocate, there would be only a fine that would be paid out. Now, all 3 women had a child, some born and some were unborn. While pregnant, if they die in giving birth as a result of being struck, the man that struck her dies. Yet, if they are not pregnant and are accidentally struck and killed, the man can flee for safety in a city of refuge. However, if a child dies, according to them, it's just a fine. So why would a person get the death penalty when a woman with child dies as a result of an accident, but the same woman were to die by accident by the very same man, he would keep his life? You can't say that the man should die because the baby would not have a mother, because in the first example I gave you, the mother did die and already had a child. Yet if the text is stating that at birth, if no hurt or injury should follow, and that there should be a fine, well, that makes sense, meaning both the woman and the child are okay. How so? Well, after all, did not the mother worry if the child would die or even become handicapped? Second, the second part makes sense to show the value of the unborn, since only a woman with child that dies would the man receive the death penalty, even if it was by accident. Exodus 21:23 states, "And if any mischief or hurt follows, then thou shalt give life for life." This is pretty simple. If there is hurt, there should be a penalty that fits. In conclusion, to state that the unborn is of less value cannot explain why only a woman that is carrying the unborn in her womb would be the only determining factor if the man who struck her accidentally will receive the death penalty. Yet that same woman, when she is not pregnant and dies by accident, even by the same man, would not produce a death penalty for him. Here is a question: where in the Bible does God ordain abortion? To state that the unborn is of less value is to simply not study the text that is staring you right in the face. And here's the clincher. Here's my final thought. I'm going to say this slowly, and I'm going to also put this in the description bar. If the unborn does not have the same value as a person that has already been born, then why could a person who accidentally killed someone could only be sentenced to death when an unborn child is involved?